Good morning, students. Myself, Dr. Prema Akkasaligar, working as professor and PG coordinator in the Department of Computer Science, BLDAS, Dr. PG Halkatti College of Engineering and Technology, Bijaypur. Today, I am going to give a presentation on memory management. In my previous video play, I have discussed about the process management, where we showed how the CPU can be shared by set of processors. As a result of CPU scheduling, we can improve both utilization of CPU and the speed of the computer response time to the users. To realize this increase in performance, we must keep several processors in memory. So we should know how the main memory is shared by different processors. In this presentation, I'll be covering about the background of memory, basic hardware required for memory, address binding, logical versus physical address space, dynamic loading, dynamic linking, and swapping. As we all know, memory is central to the operation of modern computer system. Memory consists of a large array of words or bytes, each with its own address. The CPU fetches instructions from the memory according to the value of the program counter. So, a typical instruction cycle, for example, first fetches an instruction from the memory. The instruction is then decoded and may cause operands to be fetched from the memory. Afterwards, the instruction has been executed on the operands. The result may be stored back into the memory. The basic hardware required for memory management are the main memory and the registers. These two are built into the processors itself. These are the only storage devices that CPU can access directly. There are machine instructions that take the memory address as arguments. Therefore, any instruction in execution and any data being used by instructions must be in one of these direct access storage devices. Registers are built into CPU are generally accessible within one cycle of CPU clock. The same cannot be said of main memory, which is accessed via transaction on the memory bus. Completing memory access may take many cycles of the CPU clock. In such cases, the processor normally needs stall, since it does not have data required to complete the instruction that it is executing. This situation is intolerable because of the frequency of the memory access. The remedy is to add fast memory between the CPU and the main memory. A memory buffer used to accommodate a speed differential is called as a cache. In this slide, we'll discuss about the base and the limit registers. We first need to make sure that each process has a separate memory space. To do this, we need ability to determine the range of legal addresses that a processor may access and to ensure that process can only access legal addresses. We can provide this protection by using two registers known as base register and the limit registers, and these are as shown in the figure. The base register holds the smallest legal physical memory address and the limit register specifies the size of the range. As shown in the figure, the base register represents the processor's starting address like 3,40,040 and the last address where the process ends is 4,20,940, which is known as the limit register. So a pair of base and limit registers together define the logical address space for the particular process. This figure shows how the hardware protection is provided for the logical addresses of the process. The protection of a memory space is accomplished by having a CPU hardware compare every address generated in user mode with registers. Any attempt by a program executing in user mode to access operating system memory or other user memory results in a trap to the operating system, which it treats as an attempt as a fatal error, which is shown in the figure. The base and the limit registers can be loaded only by the operating system, which uses a special privileged instruction. Since these can be executed in kernel mode, and since only operating system executes in kernel mode, so only operating system can load the base and the limit registers. This scheme allows the operating system to change the value of registers but prevents user program from changing the register contents. Thus, the hardware protection is provided for the logical address of the processors. Now we'll discuss about address binding. Usually, a program resides on a disk as a binary executable file. To be executed, the program must be brought into memory and placed within a process. The processes on the disk that are waiting to be brought into memory for execution form the input queue. The normal procedure is to select one of the processes in the input queue and to load that process into the memory. As the process is executed, it accesses instruction and data from the memory. When process terminates, its memory space is declared available. Most systems allow user process to reside in any part of the physical memory. Addresses may be represented in a different way. Address in the source program are symbolic. A compiler will typically bind these symbolic addresses to relocatable addresses. The linkage editor or loader will in turn bind the relocatable addresses to absolute addresses. Each binding is a mapping from one address space to another address. Address binding of instructions and data to memory addresses can happen at three different stages. First stage is compile time. If you know at compile time where the processes will reside in memory, then absolute code can be generated. Second is load time. If it is not known at compile time where the process will reside in memory, then compiler must generate relocatable code. Final binding is delayed until load time. If the starting address changes, we need only to reload the user code to incorporate this changed value. Third stage is execution time. If the process can be moved during its execution from one memory segment to another, then binding must be delayed until runtime. The figure shows how user program passes through the three stages: compile time, load time, execution time. When we type a program in a C editor, it is known as a source program because we are saving it with the .c file extension. Then after saving, we compile that program. So it is initially converted into the .obj file, which is an object file, which is an assembly language code. Then it is converted into machine readable form, that is a machine language, and it is loaded into the memory. Then it is called as a process. Then a CPU executes that machine instructions one by one. Meanwhile, it reads the input data from the IO devices and executes all the steps. Then it gives the results on the screen. Now we'll see the concept of logical and physical address space. Logical address is an address generated by the CPU. Physical address is an address loaded into the register of the memory of the CPU. The compile time and load time address binding methods generate identical logical and physical addresses. However, the execution time address binding scheme results in differing logical and physical addresses. Logical address is known as a virtual address. So, logical and virtual addresses are used interchangeably. The set of all logical addresses generated by program is a logical address space. A set of all physical addresses corresponding to these logical addresses is a physical address space. Thus, in execution time address binding scheme, the logical and physical address space differ. The runtime mapping from virtual to physical addresses is done by hardware device called as memory management unit. In a simple MMU, the base register is called relocation register. The value in the relocation register is added to every address generated by the user process at the time of address is sent into the memory as shown in the figure. For example, if the base is at 14,000, then an attempt by user to address a location 0 is dynamically relocated to a location 14,000 as shown in the figure. An access to location 346 is mapped to the location 14,346. So no special hardware from the operating system is required. So it is implemented through program design, and operating system can help by providing libraries to implement dynamic loading. Static linking. The system libraries and code combined by the loader into the binary program image is called as the static linking, whereas dynamic linking is postponed until the execution time. Here, a stub is included in the image for each library function. The stub is a small piece of code that indicates how to locate the appropriate memory resident library routine, or how to load the library if the function is not already present. When the stub is executed, it checks to see whether the needed routine is already in the memory. If it is not, the program loads the function into the memory. Either way, the stub replaces itself with the address of the routine and executes the routine. Thus, next time that particular code segment is reached, the library routine executes directly under this scheme. All processes that use language execute only one copy of the library code. A library may be replaced by a new version, and all programs that reference the library will automatically use the new version. Other programs linked before the new library was installed will continue using the older library, and this system is known as the shared library. Now we'll discuss about another process known as swapping. A process must be in memory to be executed. A process, however, can be swapped out temporarily out of memory to a backing store and then brought back into memory for continued execution. For example, a multi-programming environment with a round-robin CPU scheduling algorithm, when quantum expires, the memory manager will swap out a process that just finished and to swap another process into memory space that has been freed. When each process finishes its quantum, it will be swapped with another process. Here, quantum must be large enough to allow reasonable amounts of computing to be done between the swaps. Normally, a process that is swapped out will be swapped back into the same memory space it has occupied previously. The swapping requires a backing store, as we discussed earlier. A backing store is commonly a fast disk. It must be large enough to accommodate copies of all memory images for all users, and it must provide direct access to these images. The system maintains a ready queue consisting of all processes whose memory images are on a backing store or in memory and are ready to run. Whenever a CPU scheduling decides to execute a process, it calls dispatcher. The dispatcher checks to see whether the next process is in the memory. If it is not, and if there is no free memory region, the dispatcher swaps out a process currently in memory and swaps in the desired process. It then reloads registers and transfers the control to the selected process. The figure in slide number 15 shows a schematic view of swapping. Now consider a variant of swapping policy that is for a priority based scheduling. In this method, if a higher priority process arrives and wants a service, the memory manager can swap out the lower priority process as shown in the figure. When the higher priority process finishes, the lower priority process can be swapped back in and continued, and it is known as rollout roll-in method. Here we will discuss about the inclusion of context switch time in swapping. If the next processes to be put into the CPU is not in the memory, it needs to swap out a process and swap in the target process. The context switch time can be very high in such swapping systems. For example, 1000 MB process swapping out to hard disk with a transfer rate of 50 MB per second, then swap out time is 2000 millisecond plus swap in of same sized process. So the total context switch swapping component time is 4 seconds. We can reduce this size if it is already present in the memory or we know how much memory it requires. Another problem associated with swapping is when we want to swap a process, we must make sure that it is completely idle. So never swap a process with pending IO or execute IO operation only into the IO operating system buffers. Transfers between OS buffers and process memory then occur only when the process is swapped in. So it is known as double buffering, which adds an overhead onto the CPU. Standard swapping not used in modern operating system, but modified versions are common. That is, currently uh, standard swapping is used in few systems. It requires too much swapping time and provides too little execution time to the reasonably memory management solution. So modified version of swapping is used in Unix, where swapping is normally disabled but will start if many processes are running and are using a threshold amount of memory. Swapping is again halted when the load on the system is reduced. Thank you. Thank you one and all. Stay home, stay safe.